Welcome to the Bluestocking Circle podcast, Lady Nerds on Popular Culture. We're your hosts, Gricel,
Kat,
and B.
This is Minisode 36.5, follow-up and first impressions. We don't really have any follow-up this time around, so how about we share what we've been doing to cope? Anyone developed any new habits, new hobbies? I recently switched my reading habit from evenings to mornings, and it's led to 10,000% more reading and pleasure with a side of coffee. How about you guys?
Well, I recently have been going through a bit of a reading slump, but I did spend a bunch of time going through and organizing my bookshelves, which resulted in getting rid of about 4 boxes of books from college that I will never read again. And to reward myself, I've decided to only buy special fancy editions of books that I love and plan to reread often. So first up was a new copy of Rebecca. And it's beautiful, and it has this like gold lettering on the cover, and I love it so much. And I immediately started to reread it, which has sort of gotten me back into my reading habits. And it's been very nice to be back.
Yay!
And as I've been rereading Rebecca, I think I may have found something for our Venn diagram, possibly. Perhaps long descriptive passages about gardens could go into our Venn diagram.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like that's been in a lot of things.
This has to be a new segment, like will it Venn diagram?
Yeah. We'll bring it to the jury.
How about you, B?
Funnily enough, I also reorganized my bookshelves and I finally got most of the books out of the linen closet that I mentioned in our Babysitters Club episode. And I also started reading a really adorable series by D.E. Stevenson, who's an early 20th century Scottish author that I never heard of before. I found it because I read The Blue Castle by Ella Montgomery recently, and it was one of the recommended books after you read The Blue Castle. And it begins with a book called Miss Bunkle's Book that's a bit Candleshoe-like Gricel, sort of, in that it's about a quaint English village with colorful characters.
I think every English village is essentially quaint.
That seems about right as someone who has never been to England. But in any case, this series is the perfect quarantine read, and it led me to Persephone books, which, quote, prints neglected fiction and nonfiction by mid-20th century mostly women writers, end quote. Miss Bunkle's book is one of their titles, and now I'm determined to read all the other 136 titles they have. So that should keep me busy for the rest of this pandemic.
That sounds like a worthy plan.
A very lofty goal.
Well, I think we've all developed some new reading habits. I think my personal library collection would horrify both of you, so I won't even go into it. But do we have anything else to add before we go to our first impressions?
No, but now I'm morbidly curious about your books and your collections.
Me too. We're going to need a picture.
I think you would be horrified by the severe lack of physical books in my collection.
I'm already horrified, yes.
Say no more.
See, that's what I expected. So, with that little ounce of horror, I think we should go into our first impressions.
Oh, that is a perfect transition.
Well, we've had a spring and summer full of warm and fuzzy nostalgia that hopefully has helped to ease our hearts during these uncertain times. But now, as October approaches, we are diving into the dark and disturbing areas of our past. Next time, we will be covering Stephen King's 1987 book Misery and the 1990 film of the same name. Stephen King is an author that I read voraciously between grades 7 and 12, and in the years since, I have sort of tapered off in my fandom. However, he remains a foundational part of my appreciation of the horror genre. B, you'll be our newbie next time. What are you expecting?
I've read some Stephen King, but seen very few of the movie adaptations because I'm a scaredy cat, and Misery is one that I have neither read nor seen before. However, I did read the analysis of the novel in Save the Cat Writes a Novel, so I have a good idea of the plot. I know it's about a psychotic superfan of the book series Misery who does not like how it ends, and she concocts a plan to kidnap and torture the author until he writes an ending that she is happy with, and honestly, I think a lot of fangirls can relate.
Well, I'm very curious to see how much you relate after reading the book. But I am excited to hear your opinions, and I'm also excited to revisit because, like I said, I haven't gone back to read a lot of Stephen King in probably 10 years. So who knows what I'll discover this time around. Gricel, what's your experience with Misery?
I have seen bits and pieces of the movie, have not read the book, but I have read other Stephen King novels. And my experience with Stephen King is hit or miss. I'm not necessarily a fan of horror, So I'm not sure that I'm gonna love this, but I'm willing to give it a try.
I think that Misery is not his most intense horror, I'll say, and definitely might be a good sort of introductory or a good bridge for people who aren't that into Stephen King. So we'll see. I have tempered hopes, I will say, since I'm not really sure how either of you will react to the book or the movie, but I am excited to hear your opinions, good or bad. So get a warm bowl of broth, carefully stash away some painkillers, and for gosh sakes, don't use any foul language as we confront the most intense #1 fan of fiction in Stephen King's Misery. Episode 37, Misery, will be released on October 1st. In the meantime, you may find us at thebluestockingcircle.com and on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Pinterest, and pretty much everywhere else at Blue Sock Circle. That's Blue SOX Circle. Email us at thebluestockingcircle@gmail.com to join the conversation. We're also available on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube, so please rate, review, and subscribe to help us grow.
Cheers!
Gricel, you're the host.
I gotta come up with something.